The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council floated in the middle of a giant space station, its ceiling made of transparent crystal so that the stars above seemed close enough to touch. Delegates from dozens of species sat in curved rows, their voices a low hum of politics and trade. At the very center stood the Empress of the Alien Empire, draped in robes made from the shimmering silk of her homeworld. Her crown pulsed faintly, each beat matching the rhythm of her heart's. She had called this meeting herself. The message sent across the galaxy was clear: humanity must be judged. When she arose, the room fell silent, her eyes sharp like cold glass scanned the chamber before locking on the human ambassador. He was tall, calm, and silent, almost too silent. "Humans," she began, her voice echoing through the chamber, "have spread like a disease. You take worlds not yours. You build weapons beyond your place. You ignore the rules that bind all civilized races. This arrogance will not be tolerated." Her words struck the room like a hammer. Some delegates nodded in agreement. Others shifted uncomfortably. The human ambassador didn't move. The Empress's lips curled into a smile. That wasn't a smile at all. Earth must dismantle its fleets. All supercarriers are to be decommissioned. From this day forward, humanity's role will be that of a servant, not a master. The silence in the room became heavy, almost suffocating. The ambassador slowly raised his head. His eyes met hers, not with anger, not with fear, but with something colder. He spoke only once, his voice steady. "Is that your final statement?" The Empress leaned forward. "It is not just a statement, it is a command." The ambassador said nothing more. He reached into the inside pocket of his dark uniform and tapped a small silver device. It emitted a faint tone, too soft for most ears. Then he walked out of the chamber without another word. The Empress laughed, turning to her ministers. "Pathetic. They leave like beaten dogs." She looked around at the delegates. "This matter is settled." But the matter was not settled. Not even close. Far away, beyond the reach of civilian sensors, an old network of deep space satellites came to life. They had not been active in decades, not since the war no one liked to talk about. Their activation sent a single encrypted signal to a hidden command station buried deep under the crust of Mars. There, in the cold glow of the control room, officers stood at attention as a single order appeared on every screen. "Release the 1,000. In the asteroid belt of the Eurythra system, dark shapes began to stir. They were massive, their hulls black as midnight, each the size of a city. They had no names on their hulls, only serial numbers and the faint emblem of Earth's. Defense Commander Golden Eagle clutching the globe. For years they had slept, silent giants waiting for a reason to awaken. Now that reason had arrived. Inside the first carrier, Admiral Rourke stepped onto the bridge. His uniform was immaculate, his voice steady, but in his eyes burned the quiet rage of a man who had served too long in silence. "Status: all systems green, Admiral." "Fleet power at 100%, replied his first officer. Rourke nodded. "Then let's remind them why the galaxy leaves Earth alone." Back in the council chamber, the Empress was enjoying her victory. She moved from delegate to delegate, her words dripping with triumph. "You see, even the humans know when they are beaten." A messenger drone arrived, hovering close to her ear. It whispered something in a mechanical voice. The smile froze on her face. "What do you mean? Fleet movement detected," she hissed. The drone repeated the report. Unidentified human vessels had been sighted, leaving Mars, heading into deep space in perfect formation. The scale of the movement was unusual. The drone hesitated before stating the number, 1,000. The Empress waved her hand in dismissal. Propaganda. They don't have that many It's impossible, but she remembered old rumors, whispers from the last war, the name that veterans spoke with respect and fear. The Thousand Fangs. For the first time, she felt a thin thread of unease, somewhere deep in the void between stars. The fleet accelerated. Each carrier's engines burned like a blue sun, their combined glow stretching across the darkness like a river of light. Inside their armored hulls, soldiers prepared in silence. They did not chant, they did not cheer. They only checked their weapons, tightened their armor, and waited for the moment the order came. The ambassador's signal had been received. There would be no negotiations, no speeches, only movement. And as the first of the fleet vanished into faster than light travel, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. A spark had been lit, and soon the fire would come. Asterisk, the asteroid belt of the Eurythra system was a place most travelers avoided. The rocks drifted endlessly, spinning in slow, dangerous orbits. The region was unremarkable to outsiders, except for one secret that had been buried there for almost a century. Among the drifting stones, shadows began to move. They were too large to be asteroids, too perfectly shaped to be natural. Each shadow was a warship, cloaked in the black armor of the old war. Their hulls bore no markings other than a faint serial number and the golden eagle of Earth's Defense Command. The numbers ran from 001 to 1,000, 1,000 supercarriers. They had been built in silence, far from alien eyes, each one armed with weapons that could shatter continents. For decades, they had been hidden, sleeping, powered down in the cold dark. They were Earth's final card, a force so overwhelming that no one dared test it until now. Inside the lead carrier, Eagle's Wrath, Admiral Rourke stood at the center. Off the bridge, the room was alive with activity. Officers moving between control stations, their faces lit by glowing displays. Outside the armored viewport, smaller escort ships darted between the massive carriers like fish swimming around whales. Fleet. Check. Rourke asked, his voice calm. All ships report ready, Admiral. Weapons charged. Shields stable. Engines at maximum efficiency, replied the first officer. Rourke nodded. Plot our course to the Varelian border. No detours, no warnings. The order was relayed instantly. Across 1,000 ships, captains confirmed. Engines flared to life in perfect unison, casting a blue glow across the asteroid belt. One by one, the carriers broke from their hiding places and formed into a formation so precise it looked like a single living creature moving through the void. News of the movement spread like lightning. In the outer colonies of the Empire, civilians watched in fear as human ships passed silently through the edge of their star systems. They did not fire, they did not stop, but their presence was enough to send entire worlds into panic. Markets crashed. Military governors sent urgent requests to the capital. In her throne room, the Alien Empress read the reports with disbelief. 1,000. This is absurd. Earth cannot have such numbers. One of her generals stepped forward. Majesty, the sightings are confirmed by 3 independent systems. If this is true, she interrupted sharply, then we will crush them with our own fleets. The general hesitated. Majesty, our fleets are spread thin. Our largest force is on the far border, dealing with the Iran insurgency. We cannot assemble enough ships in time to meet them head-on. The Empress's eyes narrowed. Then we will slow them, harass them, break their formation before they reach us. In the cold between stars, human ships detected the first enemy scouts. Sleek Varelian interceptors darted in from the edges of the fleet's sensor range, testing the humans' reaction. But the carriers did not adjust course. They moved like a single unstoppable wall aboard Eagle's Wrath. Admiral Rourke watched as targeting icons flashed on his screen. "Do not waste heavy weapons," he ordered. "Send in the drones." Hatches opened along the carrier's sides, releasing swarms of autonomous attack drones. Each one was small, fast, and armed with precision plasma cutters. They streaked toward the interceptors like a cloud of angry insects. The alien ships tried to evade, but the drones adapted, predicting every move. Within minutes, the scouts were neither destroyed or fleeing at maximum speed. The human fleet did not slow down, far from the battle. In a hidden communications bunker deep under Earth's surface, military strategists monitored the fleet's progress. One officer turned to his superior. "They'll be at the Varelian border in less than 6 days." The older man gave a single nod. And then, the officer replied quietly, "The galaxy will remember why humans don't fight wars halfway." On the 5th day, the Varelian Empire sent a message to the human fleet. It was not from the Empress herself, but from one of her high ministers. The voice was dripping with false politeness. "To the commanders of the Earth, fleet, please halt your advance so that we may discuss terms of understanding." Admiral Rourke listened in silence. When the message ended, he turned to his comms officer. "Send them our answer." The officer nodded, opening a channel. Rourke's voice was cold and clear. "We are not here to talk." The message reached the Empress within minutes. She clenched her fists, her claws digging into her own palms. "Then they will burn for their defiance," she hissed. But deep down, a shadow of doubt had begun to form in her mind. She had wanted to humiliate humanity. Instead, she had called out something far more dangerous, a species that did not bluff and did not forgive. In the silent dark, the 1,000 human supercarriers continued forward. The void around them seemed to grow heavier, as if the universe itself could feel the tension. There were no songs of battle, no banners, waving only the steady burn of engines and the quiet promise of what was to come. Somewhere beyond the next star system, the Empress's forces waited. But so did the moment the galaxy would remember forever. The Varelian border was a stretch of empty space, marked only by the faint glow of scattered stars. For centuries, it had been nothing more than a quiet divide between empires. Now, it was about to become the most dangerous place in the galaxy. On the edge of that border, the 1,000 human supercarriers slowed. It was not hesitation, it was precision. The fleet held position in perfect formation, their massive hulls reflecting the dim light of distant suns. For a moment, the galaxy seemed to pause, as if waiting for something to break the silence. Inside the Eagle's Wrath, Admiral Rourke stood at the center of the bridge. His crew worked quietly, their voices low, their movements deliberate. Every display showed the same thing: enemy forces assembling on the far side of the border. "Report," Rourke said. The first officer stepped forward. "Varelian fleets are massing, at least 4 major battle groups confirmed. Long-range sensors suggest reinforcement from the Inner Empire, but they are still days away. Estimated number 170 capital ships. Smaller escorts unknown. Rourke's eyes narrowed. And their formation, loose, the officer replied. They're not ready for us yet. Rourke gave a slow nod. Good, let them see us coming. In the Varelian command ship, Grand Marshal Sith paced in front of a massive tactical display. His scales shimmered under the cold light as he studied the human fleet's formation. They're not even trying to hide their numbers, he growled. They want us to see them, one of his aides said nervously. CEY stopped pacing. Why? The aide swallowed hard. To frighten us. The marshal stared at the display for a long moment before replying. Then it's working. The Empress sat on her throne, her claws tapping against the armrest. The council chamber around her buzzed with nervous energy. Reports from the border filled the air. Her ministers argued over strategies. Some demanded a retreat. Others wanted an immediate strike. Finally, she raised her hand, and the chamber fell silent. We will speak to them, she said. Her advisers exchanged worried glances. We will demand they halt their advance, she continued. If they refuse, then the galaxy will see them for what they are, warmongers. We will have the moral high ground when we destroy them. Hours later, aboard the Eagle's Wrath, a communication request came through. The Varelian crest flickered on the main display, followed by the sharp, polished voice of the Empress herself, commander of the human fleet. She began, You are trespassing on the borders of the Varelian Empire. Turn back now, and we may yet avoid unnecessary bloodshed. Admiral Rourke stood in silence, letting her words hang in the air. His crew watched him, waiting for his response. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, almost too calm. Your Majesty, you stood in front of the Galactic Council and demanded the dismantling of our fleets. You insulted my people. You attempted to shame us. Now you will live with the consequences. The Empress's eyes narrowed. You cannot hope to win against us. Our fleet's Rourke cut her off. We are not here to win. We are here to end this. The channel closed without ceremony. A moment later, the fleet's comms officer turned to Rourke. Sir, message from Earth High Command. Single line of text. Rourke nodded. Read it. The officer swallowed. Make them remember. In the alien capital, the Empress's ministers urged her to strike first, but something in Rourke's tone haunted her. She had dealt with humans before, merchants, diplomats, soldiers, but none had spoken with such certainty. And then, without warning, every Varelian communication network lit up. A human transmission was broadcasting on every frequency, in every language, across every colony of the Empire. It was only 3 words. We are coming. No threats, no demands, just a promise. Across alien worlds, panic spread like wildfire. Civilians flooded spaceports, desperate to flee. Military bases locked down. Old veterans who had fought in the last war stared at the words in silence, remembering the last time humanity had spoken like this, and the destruction that had followed. The Empress's claws dug into the arms of her throne. Shut it down, she ordered, but they couldn't. The message repeated over and over, echoing through every corner of her empire. Back at the border, the human fleet began to move again. Slowly at first, then faster, their 1,000 carriers slicing through space in perfect formation. Each step forward brought them closer to the Varelian heartworlds, closer to the throne. Admiral Rourke's eyes stayed fixed on the main display. His voice was low but clear. Signal all ships. Once we cross, there is no going back. The order spread through the fleet. Across 1,000 bridges, captains repeated it to their crews. Soldiers strapped on their armor. Weapons officers charged the main batteries. Engineers checked every system twice. The void between the two empires was shrinking. And soon there would be no void at Owenly Fire, far away on Earth. The human ambassador who had walked out of the Galactic Council sat alone in his quarters. A soft alert sounded, indicating the fleet had begun its final approach. He looked out the viewport at the stars, his reflection staring back at him. "They wanted to see our limits," he said quietly. "Now they will." By the time the human fleet crossed the border, every Varelian world knew they were coming. And still, the message played, "We are coming." The border was behind them now. The Varelian Empire lay ahead, and 1,000 human supercarriers moved through space like a silent tidal wave. Their formation was so perfect that from a distance, they looked like one giant black wall cutting across the stars. Inside the Varelian capital's defense command, alarms rang without. Pause. Screens showed the incoming fleet. The numbers on the display refused to change. 1,000 capital ships, confirmed, each escorted by squadrons of destroyers and frigates. The Empress stood before the great war map, her tail flicking with restless anger. "Assemble every warship that can move," she commanded. "Majesty," one of her admirals said, "our fleets are scattered. We can pull together perhaps 300 heavy ships in time. The rest will take weeks to arrive. Then we will fight with what we have," she said sharply. "They will bleed for every kilometer they take." Hours later, the two forces finally met. The Varelian fleet appeared ahead like a shimmering wall of silver and green hulls. Their formation stretched wide to block the humans' advance. Their battleships bristled with weapons, their dreadnoughts glowing with shield energy. From the bridge of Eagle's Wrath, Admiral Rourke studied the display. His face was calm, but his crew could feel the air grow heavier. "Enemy numbers?" he asked. The first officer replied, 299 confirmed capital ships, plus escorts. They're trying to hold the line." Rourke nodded once. "Then we'll break it." The two fleets drifted closer, the gap between them shrinking. On every ship, soldiers tightened their grip on weapons. Engineers stood ready by reactor cores, and gunners adjusted their sights. Then, in the middle of the void, the Varelian flagship broadcast a message. The Grand Marshal's voice boomed across every human channel. "This is your last chance. Turn back, or we will destroy you." Rourke didn't even glance at the comms officer. Weapons free. The order unleashed chaos. 1,000 human supercarriers lit up the darkness with their first volley. Massive railguns roared, sending projectiles the size of houses across the void at near-light speed. Plasma lances tore through space, burning holes in enemy shields. Guided missile swarms spilled from launch bays like streaks of fire, weaving around defense screens before detonating in blinding flashes. The Varelians answered instantly. Their beam weapons cut across the battlefield, like scythes, shredding human escort ships that strayed too far from the carriers. Their dreadnoughts launched heavy torpedoes the size of shuttles, each one designed to tear through carrier armor. The black emptiness between the fleets became a storm of light and death. On Eagle's Wrath, the bridge shook as enemy fire slammed into the shields. Shield integrity holding at 89%, the tactical officer reported. "Push forward," Rourke ordered. The human carriers advanced slowly, their shields absorbing hit after hit. Smaller escorts darted ahead to clear a path, sacrificing themselves to take out key enemy ships. drone swarms burst from carrier bays, overwhelming isolated Varelian destroyers and cutting them apart with surgical strikes. From the Varelian flagship, the Grand Marshal watched in disbelief as the human wall kept moving. Ship after ship in his formation was torn apart, yet the humans didn't slow. Then the moment came. The Eagle's Wrath crossed into point-blank range with the first Varelian dreadnought. Main guns, Rourke ordered quietly. The carriers. Forward cannons charged, the barrels glowing white-hot. In one blinding flash, they fired 3 shots in rapid succession. The dreadnought's shields shattered, its armor split, and a second later, the ship broke apart in a silent explosion of fire and debris. The Varelian line wavered. "Advance all ships," Rourke said. "No mercy for the next 20 minutes." The battle raged. Every minute, another Varelian warship fell. The humans fought without taunts, without speeches, only relentless precision. On the enemy side, discipline began to crumble. Smaller ships fled, leaving gaps in the line. Capital ships, isolated and surrounded, were reduced to wreckage. The once unbreakable wall of the Varelian defense was now a scattered field of burning metal in the Varelian capital. The Empress watched the live feed from the battlefield. Her claws dug into the arms of her throne until they cracked. "They will reach us," she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. A minister turned toward Her Majesty. "We must consider surrender." Her head snapped toward him. "Never." But the fire in her voice had dimmed. The human fleet pressed forward. Behind them, the wreckage of hundreds of alien ships floated like a graveyard in the void. Ahead, the path to the Varelian capital was now open. On the Eagle's Wrath, Admiral Rourke stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His voice was quiet, but it carried to every ear on the bridge. "This is what happens," he said, "when they think we've forgotten who we are." And then the fleet moved on closer to the throne. The Varelian capital hung in space like a jewel, massive towers of crystal and metal rising from the planet's surface. Golden light reflecting off oceans and city domes. For thousands of years, it had been untouched by war. No enemy fleet had ever come close enough to threaten it until now. From orbit, the shadow of the human fleet stretched across the world. 1,000 supercarriers formed a silent ring around the planet, their hulls blocking the sun in places, casting whole regions into sudden darkness. The people below looked up and saw only black shapes in the sky, stretching from horizon to horizon. Inside the Eagle's Wrath, Admiral Rourke stood before the viewport. The capital lay directly beneath them, the Empress's palace a gleaming spike of white stone and gold far below. "Status?" he asked. "All ships in position," his first officer replied. "Planetary defenses have been disabled. Their fleet is gone. They can't stop us now." Rourke nodded. "Prepare the shuttle." In the palace throne room, the Empress sat in silence. Around her, ministers whispered in panic. The sound of alarms echoed through the city as civilians rushed for shelters that would not protect them from weapons that could shatter countenance. A guard entered, his voice shaking. "Majesty, a human shuttle is descending. It will land on the palace platform." The Empress's tail flicked sharply. "How many?" "Only one," the guard replied. "One shuttle, one life form on board." Confusion rippled through the chamber. Why would the humans send only one? The shuttle cut through the clouds like a knife, its black armor reflecting flashes of lightning from a brewing storm. It landed with a heavy thud on the palace's private landing platform. The ramp lowered, and a single figure stepped out. "Admiral." Rourke, he wore no helmet. His uniform was immaculate, the crest of Earth's Defense Command shining on his chest. His boots clicked against the polished floor as he walked toward the throne room, flanked by Varelian guards who dared not lift their weapons. The great doors opened. Rourke entered, his presence filling the room like a pressure that made it hard to breathe. The Empress rose slowly. Her voice was cold, but there was a tremor beneath it. So, this is the human who commands the 1,000. Rourke stopped at the base of the throne steps. His expression did not change. "You insulted my people before the galaxy," he said. "You ordered us to dismantle our fleets. You wanted us weak. You wanted us afraid." His voice dropped lower. "We are neither." The Empress tried to meet his gaze, but the weight of his words seemed to press down on her. "If you are here for my surrender, you will not have it." Rourke reached into a long case strapped to his side and pulled out an old ceremonial sword. Its blade was polished steel, its hilt wrapped in worn leather. It was not a weapon of war, it was a symbol. He stepped forward and placed the sword at her feet. "This was taken from your empire's vaults over 100 years ago. During the last war," he said. "We kept it as a reminder." The Empress's eyes narrowed. "And now you return it." "Why?" Rourke's voice was steady. "Because I want you to understand this is restraint. This is us choosing not to burn your world." He turned, walking back toward the doors. "But remember this: if you ever provoke us again, I will not bring back a sword. I will bring the end of your empire." When he was gone, the room was silent. Ministers stared at the sword lying on the steps. No one dared touch it. The Empress looked out the palace window at the black shapes of the human fleet blotting out the stars. For the first time in her reign, she felt small dot above the planet. The 1,000 Supercarriers began to move. Their engines lit up in perfect unison, and the massive formation slowly pulled away from the capital. They did not fire a shot. They did not leave wreckage in their wake. They simply left because they had made their point in the command bridge of Eagle's Wrath. Rourke stood with his hands behind his back, watching the planet grow smaller on the screen. "Set course for home," he said. His first officer hesitated. "Sir, the galaxy will talk about this for centuries." Rourke gave the faintest hint of a smile. "Good, let them." In the weeks that followed, the story spread across every corner of the galaxy. The Empress of the Varelian Empire had been forced to stand while the human fleet darkened her skies. The 1,000 had moved, and not even an empire could stop them. Alien leaders who once spoke against Earth now spoke carefully, measuring every word. Trade deals shifted in humanity's favor. Border disputes vanished overnight. And in the shadows of distant worlds, whispers began again about the one truth no one wanted to admit aloud. Humans were not to be underestimated, and somewhere, in the quiet halls of the Galactic Council, the human ambassador sat at his desk. Reading the reports, he closed the file, leaned back in his chair, and looked up at the stars through the great crystal ceiling. "They wanted to see our limits," he murmured. "Now they know we don't have any."